morning show right here on the Arise News channel. It's time to take a look at news stories making headlines across the globe. The annual States Viability Index compiled by the Economic Confidentiality has listed 5 Nigerian states as insolvent. The index shows that only 6 states are economically viable. The 5 said to be insolvent are Katsina, Kebbi, Borno, Bayelsa, Taraba states are reported to have worse internally generated revenue performance in 2019, which is below 10% of their receipts from the Federation account. The annual State Viability Index report shows that Lagos and Ogun State rank high in revenue generation in 2019, while 5 states, Rivers, Enugu, Kwara, and Zamfara State, recorded impressive revenue generation in 2019 compared to their IGR in the previous year by improving more than 10%. The report comes amid claims by Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission that the Federation account is under intense pressure due to demands made on account by the 3 tiers of government. Yeshua Shaibu, the editor-in-chief of Economic Confidential, said the reports have shown that many states cannot survive without monthly disbursement from the Federation account. I mean, this is why we've been talking about this for a long time. In fact, I can't remember how long. The states need to generate their own money. It's not running cap in hand to the federal government every time. This is obvious.
I'm telling you, this is no news to anyone. I think we all saw it. You didn't need a crystal ball to see that the states, were not economically viable, especially because they run cap in hand to Abuja every month for that allocation. And, we continue to drive the point that the states have to be independent. They have to be financially independent. They have to be economically viable. You have to look for those sources of income beyond tax. A lot of people focus on taxation. Yes, tax. But how many of these states, can actually tax their citizens? Because you see that when you look through the list, most of them are actually civil servant states. So how much tax revenue can you actually generate? You have to look at other sources of making money. Can we look at, for instance, domestic tourism? There's so many things we could do. But, we just live on that excuse and wait for the federal government, of course, with the oil revenue coming from the Niger Delta region. Dr. Abati?
Well, this is the report for 2019, I guess. Every year, Economic Confidential prepares an annual, it's called Annual State Viability Index. And as of 2019, we were told that 5 states were insolvent. Now, that's pre-COVID. The other year, as far back as 2017, it was 14 states that were declared insolvent. That is, 14 states in 2017 in financial distress, not able to meet their financial obligations, recording a fall in revenue. In other words, states that are financially broke and cannot meet their obligations. But this 2019 report, in fact, shows an improvement. If it was just 5 states that were declared insolvent by Economic Confidential in 2019, I would say that's an improvement. Let's look forward to what will happen in 2020. We're likely to go to a situation that will even be worse than what the index told us in 2017. The truth of the matter, as has been pointed out, is that, look, our states are not centers of creativity. They are centers of consumption. Many of these states are unviable because they don't have the kind of leadership that looks inwards. Now, right from the creation of those states, many of those states were created, of course, for political reasons. And many commentators had said states should not be created for political reasons. They should be created on the basis of their viability. So these states were created, but over the years, we've seen that they've just been dependent on oil revenue and other, revenues covered by the Federal Allocation Committee, Federal Revenue Allocation Committee. That's FAC. So every month they go cap in hand, the commissioners of finance, to go and collect the share of the federal revenue, or federally generated revenue, or their share of the federation account. However, part of the problem has been poor management. We talk about corruption at all levels of government. You find that corruption, the misappropriation of funds, the mismanagement of funds, even more in the states. You will expect that states that are originally unviable will try to run at one level a transparent and accountable government, and also run a lean government. But you go to many of these states, you need to see some of the governors, on the road. Some of them have convoys that are as, long as from here to the neighboring city. And that, of course, is a major drain on the resources of these same states that we say are insolvent. If you look at the states that are, in very comfortable zone, there are states with very high economic activity. Take Lagos, for example. Even in the face of COVID-19, the projection this year was that on a monthly basis, Lagos State will be able to generate, on the average, 32 billion per month. But within the first 6 months of this year alone, Lagos State has exceeded its own projections, recording as high as 34 billion per month or 40 billion per month, such that in 2020 alone, Lagos State has been able to record over 232 billion naira, according to a recent report. Now, how many other states can do that? Rivers is on that list as a state that is doing well financially, and that's understandable. Rivers, is the home of the oil multinationals and many other businesses. Ogun is contiguous to Lagos State, so Ogun State probably also benefits from what goes on in Lagos State. So, but some of the other states that are interland, some of the war-ravaged, don't let me say war-ravaged. Some of those states where you have banditry, where you have terrorism, they have also suffered, on account of the kind of situation in which we have found ourselves. So, but what is required is better creativity, a higher level of accountability in many of the states of the Federation. They need to look beyond monthly federal allocation. And incidentally, there is no state that doesn't have economic resource. The thing to do is to think out of the box and develop those resources instead of relying on pay as you earn or direct assessment taxation, basically.
All right, thank you so much for that. That's well said. Just to put in this in less than a minute, the truth has to be said. They have to be centers of creativity. When we keep talking about federalism, federalism means that you should be creative, you should be innovative, you should make some money and put to the federal post. So if we keep arguing the argument about federalism and you can't even make money, you can't crack it, then the argument still falls to the ground.
And there are those who are still calling for more creation of states, even with the ones we have.
Because of the politics of it.
Yes.
And it's also in order to get more money on that federal allocation, not necessarily because they want to.
We need to create a distinction between politics and economic viability. All right, that's all on the news headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rotus, Michael, and Aaron to give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. The dependable Rotus Odiri is here to give us African business update. Over to you, Rotus.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor, and good morning, Adiswa. I think today is the central bank edition. We start with Zambia. Remember yesterday I talked about the President Edgar Lungu of Zambia dismissing the central bank governor, Mr. Kayayal. That's the president of Zambia. Of course, he was appointed in 2015. His contract was extended. There he is. That's the former central bank governor of Zambia. His contract was extended in 2018, but for some reason, he was dismissed, and there was no reason given. Christopher Muvungu, who is the secretary in the Economics and Finance Department, deputy secretary, he is what has been appointed as the new CBN governor over in Zambia, central bank governor in Zambia. So the IMF has released a statement. If we take a look at the IMF statement here, say in response to media inquiry regarding the recently announced change in leadership at the Central Bank of Zambia, IMF spokesman made the following statement. We note the change in leadership announced over the weekend at the Bank of Zambia before the end of the previous governor's mandate. The macroeconomic stability that most developing countries have enjoyed in recent years has greatly relied on the much improved effectiveness and increased independence of central banks. It is imperative that central banks' operational independence and credibility is maintained, particularly at this critical time when stability is threatened by the COVID-19 pandemic. Without credible banks and sound policies, sustained economic growth and much-needed improvements in living standards will not be possible. So that's the IMF statement. Now, Tito Mboweni, who is the finance minister of South Africa, sent out some. Now, these tweets were deleted, but if you're a public figure, and you delete tweets, somebody is going to screen capture it and keep them. So he deleted these tweets, but we were able to get hold of them. He says, never allow anybody to bully you. Whoever, Prime Minister, President, Speaker, Chairperson of the Board of Directors, CEO, stand your ground. Let them fire you if needs be. They must give reasons publicly why. Stand for genuine principles. He was tweeting this with regards to what happened over at the Central Bank of Zambia. He now sent out a follow-up tweet. Says, looks like I'm in trouble about my statement on the dismissal of the Bank of Zambia governor. I stand by my statement. Central bank independence is key, not negotiable. Let all central bankers speak out. So there's been a debate about this going back and forth. On the one hand, people are saying, look, Mr. Mboweni, you're the finance minister of South Africa. You have your country is in a recession. South African Airways is bankrupt. Eskom is mired in corruption charges, causing blackouts all over South Africa. South Africa's unemployment is anywhere between 30 to 40%. You've got unions that are going back and forth with you. Go and mind your business and face your own country's problems. But on the other hand, people are saying, look, somebody has to speak out about this and something has to be said. There's so many tweets, but I just picked one. One random tweet from a gentleman, I think his name is Mpiyake or so, speaking out about this. If we take a look at the tweet, it says, Tito Mboweni is right to speak up about the Zambian Central Bank losing its independence. Keeping quiet when things go wrong has to stop, especially on this continent. So the independence of institutions in Africa is still a running narrative. Now, this is another one. He was reprimanded by Ramaphosa. The presidency of South Africa reprimanded Tito Mboweni for his comments, and they put out this statement. They said, President Ramaphosa wishes to assure the government of the people of the Republic of Zambia that the unfortunate remarks do not reflect the views of the South African government and its people. So the presidency had to quickly scramble to react to the comments that he made. So it's caused a big stir back and forth with regards to central bank independence, whether officials in one country don't usually talk so publicly about things going on in another one. All right, now we move on to a Central Bank of Nigeria now. This is a Form M circular, or destination payment for all Form Ms, letters of credit and other forms of payment. If we zoom in on this, let's go to the next slide where we zoom in. This is from the Central Bank of Nigeria. They're saying that essentially, just to read the first paragraph, as part of continued efforts by the Central Bank of Nigeria to ensure prudent use of our foreign exchange resources and eliminate incidences of over-invoicing, transfer pricing, double handling charges, and avoidable costs that are ultimately passed to the average Nigerian consumers, authorized dealers are hereby directed to desist from opening of Form Ms whose payments are routed through a buying company or agent or any other third parties. What essentially this circular is saying is that if you present your Form M to import something into the country, you can no longer go through a third party. The reason why, when you talk there about over-invoicing, if you want to import an item that costs maybe $10,000 and you go to a third party, the third party is now going to maybe add an extra $1,000 or $2,000 on top. And then the destination supplier that is providing the item you're importing still gets the $10,000, but the extra $1,000 or $2,000 is pocketed by them. So the central bank is trying to clamp down on this happening by making sure that the Form Ms are routed directly to whomever it is you are importing your item from. Also, in that same statement there, they're also saying that they are going to they're going to check for the verification mechanism. Look at the third paragraph. Additionally, in line with best practices around the world, the CBN will immediately introduce a product price verification mechanism to forestall issues with mispricing. So if you're putting in a Form M for an item, the central bank is saying now that they're going to actually be able to check the price of that particular item that you want to import to make sure that there's no shenanigans going on. And then finally, another circular to disclose, this is to the banks rather, that's Deposit Monetary Banks-led electricity market collections. There's 8 points, so it's a very long circular, but this first paragraph essentially summarizes everything that they're trying to do. They're essentially saying that, if you just look at point 1 there, banks providing bank guarantees to the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading, MBET, and the Transmission Company of Nigeria on behalf of DISCO should take full responsibility for A, the collection of the concerned DISCOs, and B, remittances of the DISCOs to both MBET and TCN. So if you look at the power chain, you generate power, you transmit it, you distribute it. So MBET, on behalf of all Nigerians, purchases power from the GENCOs and then gives that over to the DISCOs. The DISCOs then distribute the power to you and I. then you and I pay for the power, the money goes back to, and so it goes back up the chain. The money goes back to the discos then remit it back to MBEDs, who then sends it back to the Gencos. So what the central bank is saying is that all banks who are guaranteeing those payments on behalf of the discos have to take responsibility for making sure those payments, so they're essentially ring-fencing all payments in the electricity value chain. I think this has to do with maybe part of the electrification deal with Siemens, where they're making sure that they streamline all payments related to the value chain. Of course, this is still important. This still depends on meters, everybody getting metered, and everybody, making sure that you know exactly what you're paying for, because you still have the issue of liquidity where not all of us are paying for power. But it is a very good initiative that's being taken on.
Right, Rotus, most importantly across that conversation on power still has to be cost-reflective tariff. A lot of people and a lot of investors feel very happy going to places like Senegal to do business, to set up power stations because of cost-reflective tariffs. When are we going to get it? That's the first question. Second question, as regards central bank autonomy, the back and forth conversation between Zambia and Tito Mboweni, I'd like to remember the words of Walema Julius Nyerere that called IMF the International Ministry of Finance. Could that be the case? Could it be that IMF is proving, just like Nyerere of Tanzania said, is the International Ministry of Finance?
Well, look, the cost-reflective tariffs, that's something that's still being reviewed. I remember, I think it was the National Assembly or so that postponed that happening because of COVID-19. But that's something that still has to happen at some point. It's just the timing of it. So increased tariffs, so increased VAT, disposable incomes are lower, and Nigerians are in the middle of a contracted economy. So that's something that still needs to be addressed. The IMF is speaking truth to power. I think I stand with what the statement they made. They just put out the statement. That's all they did. They just say, hey, look, this is not the time to be removing a central bank governor whose term you just extended. It's just, and it displaces things, it distorts things in your market, especially in emerging economies that are fighting COVID-19.
Well, the question with regard to the removal of Denny Kwayaya is simply this, whether the IMF will stop engaging Zambia. Zambia is in a very difficult situation at the moment. Its growth rate last year was 1.9%. The CBN governor that was removed was even saying that it could be worse this year. Now, I read a comment in Lusaka Times, which says his removal is like replacing an experienced heart surgeon with a mechanic in the middle of a heart surgery. Yes. Because Denny Kwayaya has a reputation for his professionalism, for his thoroughness, and how in the last 5 years he had helped to turn around, at least to stabilize the Zambian economy. At the time he took over, the price of copper was down there. Inflation was over 22%, but he's been able to stabilize the economy, considering the fact that he was deputy governor before in that same central bank, and he had worked for many years with the World Bank. Yes. So it's a very sad development, and the president has not given any reason. Of course, the independence of the central bank is something that all central bankers insist upon. But what we have seen is that everywhere there's always an attempt by politicians to politicize the central bank for their own selfish purposes. Look at the relationship between President Trump and the Federal Reserve in the United States, for example. As for what the CBN is doing with the discos, the relevant question is, what is the reaction of the discos themselves? Because it looks like the CBN has introduced a policy that will control their resources, not just ring-fencing their funds.
Okay, thank you so much, Rotos. Moving on to Michael. Michael, good morning.
Good morning. I'll take you to China first in our narrative, and their stock's doing actually quite well overnight. To add relief, China is also saying and underlining the fact that it's agreed with the United States to continue pushing forward to the implementation of the Phase 1 trade deal. You remember that involves China buying a huge amount of US imports, which it hasn't done so far, but both sides have said that they have made some kind of progress and are committed to the agreement. A statement from the US trade representative said the two parties had discussed matters like intellectual property rights and other issues, which have so far been sticking points over a phase 2 deal. Again, it's all very complicated, but I mean, that gave a bright look to the Asian markets and the last knockings of what happened on Wall Street last night. Japanese shares rose, trading to levels that were almost pre-pandemic, and the benchmark Nikkei average gaining 1.75%. So, European, back to yesterday, European US markets got off to a solid start to the week. S&P 500 and NASDAQ once again setting record highs. There was a lot of suggestion yesterday, remember the vaccine story about President Trump fast-tracking the approval of the AstraZeneca/Oxford University vaccine by October. I mean, people I spoke to yesterday say that will never actually happen. It just won't. It just is the approval of it is not going to be fast tracked like that. It's just another political spouting, really. But so yesterday's rebound, I think, basically was driven by a lack of particularly bad news. And also remember, we're looking forward to the virtual Jackson Hole meeting of central bankers at the end of the week, and some clues as to what might happen there have come up. The chairman of the Fed has said that what he wants to do is to spur US inflation back to what he describes as a healthy level. What that means for investors, or this is called average inflation targeting. It's very boring, the technicalities of it, but what it means is that the Fed will allow inflation to run. The implication of that is that therefore there won't be a succession of rate hikes to control it. That's what helped the markets yesterday. And also, do remember that the US rebound there's this cohort of big tech companies, which is actually helping it rather than the broader background of the economy. So, given that optimism that we had popping over from the United States into the Asian markets, we will have today the latest consumer confidence numbers from the United States. Sharp slump in July, and a sharp slump from June to July, but we may see a modest improvement in that today. Germany, now here's an interesting one. Their GDP revised figures actually show quite a considerable improvement in the prospects for their economy. A contraction of -10 was revised to -9. Now that's pretty bad, but it's not as bad as was expected. But much more importantly, I feel as though the IFO Business Confidence Survey, which we'll get at both our times, 10 o'clock this morning, will say a lot about where they think the German economy is actually going and where it is right now, which is always much more important than what has happened in the past, because that is the past and so on. The IFO business climate rose to a post-pandemic high of 90.5. That's very, very bad. And it's actually slipping now to 74.2. We'll get the detail of that at 10 o'clock. It could be that a lot of German businesses are very much concerned about a second wave. I would be if I were them. But however, given the last week's flash PMI figures, either the immediate PMI figures didn't sound too bad at all. UK economy, not doing too badly, and we'll see from the CPI retail sales figures, which are out later today. The improvement is possibly due to the fact that the UK government has been much more cautious in opening up parts of the service sector. So this kind of pent-up demand is now actually coming through. And finally, commodities, crude oil prices, well, unsurprisingly, fairly mixed. What traders are trying to get to grips with are these two tropical storms, Marco and Laura, which are hitting the Gulf of Mexico. And as I was saying yesterday, that impacts output by about 50%. So they get the crews off the rigs and all the rest of it. And also rising coronavirus cases in Asia and Europe, which would affect demand. So that's basically a fairly mixed picture as far as commodities are concerned, and oil in particular. That's the global view.
Well, Michael, I'd like us to talk a little bit more about the phase 1 talks between China and the United States. One paper described it as constructive. How constructive is this? Particularly when you consider the timing. That meeting that took place yesterday evening was supposed to have taken place 10 days ago. But President Trump at the time postponed the meeting without any explanation. He simply said, I don't want to talk to China right now. But then 10 days later, that meeting took place. Is this about President Trump preparing for the Republican National Convention to send the signal out there that is very tough on China as compared to the man they call Beijing Biden? They say will be very soft on China. But I get the impression that China is not impressed, or is China impressed? Because the statement that was issued by the Chinese didn't show any enthusiasm about whatever conversation took place yesterday evening.
No, and never mind what anybody says. The facts are that China has not bought the amount of imports it agreed to as far as phase one is concerned. And neither the United States nor China can actually agree on what they have actually bought and what the United States has bought. So their trade figures don't even tally at the base point. So I think there's actually a long way to go. I think that doing this with China plays very well with the electorate in the United States. And I think you're absolutely right. The politics involved in this, it is after all the Republican convention this week, and that will feature very, very highly indeed. I think he'll want to somehow bring something from this, and I think therefore when you get a US trade representative saying the talks have been positive, then it does show, look, we are being firm, but we are clamping down and we're not giving anything away. And I think that the giving anything away is a message that he feels he has in control, whether you believe it or not, rather than Joe Biden. We're not really sure what Joe Biden's attitude towards this is, because he was very policy light really last week as far as the Democrats were concerned. So, I mean, the problem about these trade talks is you never really know what's actually going on because nobody tells you. There are these occasional communiques like we get, and then that slips through to the market, and the market kind of reacts optimistically or pessimistically. It's very, very crude science, Doctor, and not really something we should be relying on. I feel as though if they are talking, it is at least constructive, because both sides do not want not to have a trade deal.
All right. Well, I'd love to say actually about the TikTok deal, but we need to go to Aaron this morning. Thank you so much, Michael. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Aaron the Baron Akirejola is here with us.
All right. Good morning to you, Rufai. Good morning, Adesua. Doctor.
Good morning, Aaron.
It's good to be here today, and we have quite a lot to run through. Of course, we're looking at the COVID-19 figures for today, quite a lot. And still, as we've been speaking, in terms of the number of cases that we've been seeing now, 223 million cases, more than 23 million cases have been recorded. 23,657,550 are the number of cases, and the number of total of deaths so far are 813,257 right now. And with that happening, if we actually take a look at how things are actually going around the world in terms of COVID-19. Let's start it off in South Africa, where the Ministry of Health in South Africa are actually saying that they are beginning to experience a downward spiral in the number of cases. We know that without a doubt, South Africa has actually invested a lot in testing, and they have the most number of tests conducted on the continent of Africa, 3.5 million and counting at the number of testing that has been done in South Africa, and we've seen quite a number of positive cases from that, about 611,450, all right, so, and quite a lot of recoveries also. Now, the death is still the one breaking several hearts across the world. That's 13,159, all right, which is the highest in Africa as we stand right now. 1,677 new cases we are experiencing. They are claiming that they are not sure if there will be a second wave, but what we've seen, which has been an upward shoot and spike of the number of cases in South Africa, is beginning to dwindle. Good news, I must actually say. Remember, the WHO had to send some doctors there to help them curb the virus because things were really going out of hand in South Africa. Moving away from South Africa, bringing it down here to Nigeria, we're beginning to see this. We've been talking about schools reopening and how to manage COVID-19. In Akwa Ibom State, the government has said that they actually tested about 100 students, and one of them came back positive, albeit asymptomatic at that. But they are still going about testing, sharing face masks, and the rest of them. And the gold standard in terms of resumption of schools or businesses still remains that if you have more than 5% of the test results come back positive, then you should not open. I don't know if several of those people are adhering to that, but if you have below 5% of the test results comes back positive, then you should be getting the green light to actually open. But with the fact that testing is not as prevalent as much as we expected on the continent of Africa, to be precise, here in Nigeria, with the presidential task force also ensuring and putting pressure on state governments to do more testing. Let's see how that goes. But at the moment, we're seeing schools reopen, and certainly cases like this will always occur when schools actually reopen. Moving away from that, yesterday, the Commissioner of Health here in Lagos State, Professor Abayomi, tested positive for COVID-19. They announced that yesterday morning, and he says he's doing well. We've been doing an update about that, and he's self-isolating, and he's doing well. Still going about his duties, not physically, but virtually, going about his duties virtually and as much as he can to ensure that COVID-19 remains low, or they try to flatten the curve here in Lagos State. Remember, Lagos State is the epicenter of COVID-19 here in Nigeria. We've seen quite a lot of cases. Most of the cases we've seen of COVID-19 in Nigeria has come from Lagos State or originated from Lagos State. So we're keeping an eye on that. And also, moving away from that, I must say that, of course, superstar, and he likes to party a lot, Usain Bolt, celebrating his 34th birthday some days ago, decided to have a party without a face mask, without social distancing, and when you do that, you're asking for trouble. Boom, certainly he tested positive for COVID-19. He's self-isolating right now. He's posted a video of himself in the hospital trying to just get calm, but I think he's improving and things are going well. Before we get into some key stories there, let me just say that COVID-19 is changing businesses and how we do business around the world. As a matter of fact, popular brand KFC have said that that word finger-licking good has to be taken off their slogan, because you and I know what COVID-19, what it represents right now. As much as possible, we say no physical contact between your hand to your nose to your mouth if you've not washed it. So saying that is almost contradictory to the times, and they're saying they're going to take that one off. Quickly, now, to the crux of the matter, WHO are speaking, and they're actually employing the world over to join the solidarity for a vaccine. Now, they said that 172 countries have actually joined that particular solidarity for a global vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine around the world, and they are employing more, because if we come together to fight COVID-19, certainly we'll be able to get over this thing. We've been talking about vaccine nationalism, and they're saying that that is the way to empower the virus. And they said that for those that want to join the global COVAX plan, they have up until the 31st of August to actually submit an expression of interest, and on the 18th of September for a confirmation of intention, and also payments must be made. And if we can come together, let's see how it goes. Remember, the US, the UK have spent billions, as a matter of fact, he said trillions of dollars in ensuring that we get a vaccine. Now, talking about the vaccine, we've been talking about vaccines as therapeutics. And as it stands right now, quickly, there are quite a lot of them that have been going around the world. We'll see how much we can take today, and maybe put it out there. Of course, so only just 2 are widely being used. Several of them are kind of promising. All right, some of them are supposed to block the virus from entering into the system, just like what is done in HIV and AIDS. Some of the most promising have been remdesivir, favipiravir, and also MK-4482. Some of these ones, we've not really seen so much success. Moving on to the next slide, it also explains a little bit further. Of course, ivermectin, that is being heavily used in Australia. They're also touting it as one of those miracle drugs out there, but clinical results and clinical tests have been done severally, and it's not come back positive as much. So mixed reviews there. Of course, hydroxychloroquine, Donald Trump's favorite drug, and chloroquine itself has actually helped a lot of people. That has been the claim, but scientists and even the WHO have been putting a massive question mark about the efficacy of that particular drug. Then we spoke yesterday of convalescent plasma, trying to, and then also not forgetting monoclonal antibiotics, then interferons. Some of these ones are quite massive. Then not forgetting trying to put out the fire. That's what they call this particular category that has to do with dexamethasone, then cytokine inhibitors. Some of these ones are pushing the boundaries, and certainly the ones that get us all worried, more importantly, are those pseudoscience or those people that go around perpetrating and pushing things that have no basis scientifically. Of course, like drinking or injecting bleach or disinfectants, using UV light, using silver to cure COVID-19 at the moment, or probably it could be a dung from any animal. Those do not work. And the WHO have been saying, please, as much as possible, stay away from all that.
Well, Aaron, two quick comments. The first on Professor Akin Abayomi, the Commissioner for Health in Lagos State. Well, our thoughts and prayers go out to him, and we wish him a quick recovery. This, again, is an indication of the risk that frontline health workers face.
Yes.
He has been in the front line of the fight against COVID-19 in Lagos State, and he has discharged his duties professionally, diligently, and then this news that as a result of his exposure in the course of duty, he's now down with COVID-19. We'll continue to pray for him, and he has shown a great example. The second comment is about the COVAX facility. 4 days ago, Osage Hanire, the Minister of Health, indicated that Nigeria was already talking to WHO, and Nigeria had enrolled on the ACT program. And of course, we hope that Nigeria will take special notice of the deadlines that have been given by WHO and act accordingly in the best interest of Nigeria.
All right, thank you so much, Aaron. There's a lot to talk about, but no time.